The silent plea, the distress signal pulsed through the void, a desperate rhythm that echoed across parsecs of empty space. In the grand chamber of the Galactic Concord, Ambassador Turleth of the Mithrani watched the holographic projection with eyes that had witnessed 3 centuries of cosmic politics. His iridescent scales reflected the dim light as he turned to face the assembly of 200 species. "The Voidborn have claimed 17 more systems," he announced, his translator converting the clicking sounds of his native tongue into the standard speech of the Concord. "The outer defense line has fallen." Murmurs rippled through the chamber, a cacophony of voices, whistles, and subsonic vibrations. The Voidborn, they had no other name for the entities that had emerged from the dark space between galaxies 6 cycles ago. They consumed worlds, not for resources or territory, but seemingly for the pleasure of extinction itself. Chancellor Elix, a towering Phyrexian with skin like polished obsidian, raised all 4 of her arms for silence. "We have deployed every weapon in our collective arsenal. We have sacrificed fleets and evacuation ships carrying billions. Yet the Voidborn advance, untiring and unrelenting." From the shadows at the edge of the chamber stepped forward High Admiral Vexra, her feathered crest flattened against her skull in what the assembly recognized as the Artaxian expression of grim resolve. "There remains one option," she said, "one we have avoided discussing for obvious reasons." The chamber fell silent, as if the very air had frozen. Everyone knew what she meant. Earth, the forbidden word, the quarantine system. "Preposterous," hissed Delegate Morba of the Ultheri regime. "The humans were sealed away for good reason." Did we all collectively forget what they did during the Hegemony War? The weapons they unleash, the way they— "We remember," interrupted Chancellor Elix. "But the Voidborn will reach the core worlds within 2 cycles. After that, there will be nothing left to save." Ambassador Turleth moved to the central dais. The quarantine was their choice as much as ours. After the war, they withdrew. They built their walls around their system, walls we cannot penetrate, and they severed all diplomatic channels. But there is one frequency they maintained, one emergency channel kept open, though never used in 300 years. The Concord Council voted. It was not unanimous, but desperation had a way of overwhelming caution. Ambassador Turleth was chosen to send the message, a simple plea for aid encoded with coordinates of the Voidborn advance and data on their devastating capabilities. The message was sent. Then they waited. For 7 rotations, silence reigned. Some delegates began to whisper that perhaps humanity had died out, victims of their own terrible technologies. Others suggested that the humans had simply chosen to ignore the galaxy that had once feared them so greatly. On the 8th rotation, as the Concord Council convened for another grim assessment of retreating defense lines, every communication system in the chamber activated simultaneously. Screens that had been dark flickered to life. Holographic projectors hummed with sudden energy. No face appeared. No visual representation at all. Just a single phrase in text, automatically translated into each species' native language. "Understood. Stand clear. We are coming." Then, as suddenly as they had activated, the systems went dark again. "What does it mean, stand clear?" asked a young Tellarate representative. Clear of what? No one answered. No one needed to. Within hours, reports began flooding in from the outer sectors. Monitoring stations going offline. Unmapped gravimetric disturbances. Quantum fluctuations that defied the laws of physics as the Concord understood them. On the observation deck of the Concordant station, Admiral Vexra watched the long-range sensors with mounting disbelief. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Nothing moves that fast through normal space." But the readings didn't lie. Something was approaching, not through hyperspace or quantum tunnels, or any known method of faster-than-light travel. They were simply appearing, as if reality itself was bending to accommodate their presence. The first visual confirmation came from a patrol vessel near the Carthax Nebula. The footage was brief before transmission cut out, But it showed enough. A vessel of impossible proportions, its hull not reflecting light but seeming to absorb it. It wasn't built in the sleek designs of Concorde ships or the crystalline structures of the Voidborn. It was angular, brutal, functional, like a weapon given form. For 3 days, sightings continued. Not one ship, but hundreds, perhaps thousands. They appeared at strategic points throughout Concorde space, yet made no hostile movements, no communications, no demands. They simply waited. On the 4th day, a single human vessel detached from the Armada and approached the Concordan station. It dwarfed the station, making the once impressive center of galactic governance seem like a toy by comparison. A transmission request came through, audio only. "This is Captain Ileana Reyes of Earth Defense Force Vessel Retribution. Preparing to dock and establish liaison. One representative only. No weapons. No scans." Ambassador Turleth volunteered immediately. As the most senior diplomat, it was his duty. The docking procedure was completed in silence, the massive human vessel connecting to the station with surgical precision. The airlock cycled, and Ambassador Turleth found himself face to face with a human for the first time in his long life. Captain Rice was not what he expected. She was small, barely reaching his chest, with dark skin and eyes that reflected no emotion whatsoever. She wore no armor, just a simple uniform of dark material, with no insignia except a small Earth emblem on her collar. "You requested aid," she said simply. Her voice was flat, mechanical almost, as if she were merely a vessel for words rather than their originator. "Yes," Turleth replied. "The Voidborn, they cannot be stopped by conventional means." "We know." Captain Rice tilted her head slightly. "We've been watching." The revelation sent a chill through Turleth's scales. "Watching? For how long?" "We never stopped watching." She gestured to a tablet-like device in her hand. "Your Concorde has faced 17 major extinction-level threats in the last 3 centuries. Each time, you've managed to overcome them. This one is different. You know of the Voidborn. We've encountered their kind before. Not here. Elsewhere." Her eyes finally met his, and what he saw there made his blood run cold. There was something wrong with her eyes. They moved too precisely, calculated rather than felt. "Captain Reyes," he began carefully, "may I ask, what happened to humanity after the quarantine?" For the first time, something like emotion crossed her face, the ghost of a smile. "We evolved, Ambassador. When the galaxy rejected us for what we had done to save it, we turned inward. We questioned what it meant to be human. We found answers that changed us." "Changed how?" She didn't answer directly. Instead, she held out her hand. Above it, seemingly from nowhere, appeared a holographic display of the Voidborn fleet, thousands of their world-killer vessels approaching the core systems. "In approximately 46 hours, they will reach your most populated worlds. When they do, billions will die. We can prevent this." "How?" "By becoming what you feared we were." She closed her hand, and the hologram vanished. "We need your authorization to engage within Concorde space. Once given, you cannot revoke it until the threat is eliminated." Ambassador Turleth hesitated. 300 years ago, humanity had unleashed weapons so terrible that even their allies had turned against them. What had they become in their isolation? What price would the galaxy pay for their help? But the alternative was extinction. "You have our authorization," he said finally. "What do you need from us?" "Nothing," Captain Rice replied. "Just stay out of our way." As she turned to leave, Turleth called after her, "Captain, what are you going to do?" She paused at the airlock, not turning back. "What we always do, Ambassador. We're going to win, no matter the cost." The human vessel disengaged from the station minutes later. Within the hour, the entire Earth fleet began to move, silent and purposeful, toward the advancing Voidborn Armada. Ambassador Turleth stood in the observation lounge, watching the distant flashes of light as the two forces met at the edge of the Kalaris sector. Even at this distance, what he witnessed defied comprehension. The human ships did not engage in traditional space combat. They did not fire energy weapons or launch fighters. Instead, they seemed to bend space itself, creating distortions that swallowed void-borne vessels whole. Where the humans passed, reality seemed to fray and unravel. "By the first suns," whispered Admiral Vexera, who had joined him at the viewport. "What have they become?" Turleth had no answer. But watching the methodical annihilation of an enemy they had thought invincible, he understood with perfect clarity why humanity had chosen isolation. It was not to protect themselves from the galaxy. It was to protect the galaxy from them. The reckoning. Dawn never comes in deep space, but something about the way the battlefield looked after 12 hours of continuous engagement suggested a morning of sorts, the birth of a new reality. Ambassador Turleth had not left the observation deck, transfixed by the distant conflict that defied standard tactical analysis. "Our sensors can't make sense of it," Admiral Vexera admitted, her voice hoarse from hours of issuing orders to keep Concord ships clear of the engagement zone. "The humans are using technology that operates on principles we don't understand." The main view screen showed fragmented footage from long-range probes. Human vessels phasing in and out of normal space. Weapons that didn't so much destroy as rewrite. Voidborne ships collapsing into themselves, their matter converted into something else entirely. "It's as if they're not fighting a war," murmured Chancellor Elix, who had joined them hours ago. "It's as if they're conducting an experiment." A communication officer rushed to their side. "Ambassador, we're receiving a transmission from the human flagship. They're requesting reinforcements at these coordinates." Turleth frowned. "Reinforcements? From us?" "Yes, sir. They specifically asked for medical ships and evacuation vessels." Admiral Vexera's feathers stiffened. "Are they losing?" The answer came not from the officer, but from Captain Rice herself, who appeared suddenly on the main view screen. Her uniform was torn, and blood, unmistakably red, disturbingly human, trickled from a gash on her forehead. "This is Captain Rice to Concord Command. We've broken their main fleet, but we've identified their control node. It's a planetoid-class vessel at these coordinates." Data streamed across a secondary screen. "We're moving to engage, but there are 17 habitable worlds in the projected fallout zone. We need evacuation ships immediately." "Fallout." Chancellor Elix stepped forward. "Captain, what exactly are you planning?" For the first time, emotion, genuine, human emotion, flickered across Ray's face. It wasn't fear. It was something worse. Resignation. "Chancellor, we're deploying a void catalyst. There won't be time to explain the physics, but imagine it as a localized Big Bang in reverse. Nothing within the radius will exist afterward. Not as matter, not as energy, not as anything comprehensible." Silence fell over the command deck. Such a weapon violated every principle of warfare the Concord had established, every ethical boundary they had drawn. "You can't," whispered Elix. "The casualties will be a fraction of what the Voidborn would inflict if allowed to continue." Rise cut in sharply. "We've lost 37% of our fleet already. This ends now, or it doesn't end at all. Your choice, Chancellor. Evacuation ships or not." The decision was made. Every available Concord vessel was diverted to the 17 worlds in the fallout zone, a clinical term for what would become the site of the most devastating weapon ever deployed in the galaxy's history. As the evacuations proceeded, Turleth requested permission to join a diplomatic vessel heading to the front lines. He needed to see, to understand what humanity had become. Chancellor Elix approved, perhaps understanding that someone needed to bear witness. The journey took 6 hours through emergency hyperspace corridors. When they emerged, the battlefield spread before them in all its impossible horror. The human fleet had formed a perfect sphere around what could only be the Voidborn control node, a massive construction of dark crystal and pulsing energy fields. Half of the human vessels were clearly damaged, some critically, venting atmosphere or drifting with clear structural failures. But they maintained their formation with machine precision. Ambassador Turleth to Earth Fleet. I request communication with Captain Reyes. Moments passed before a response came through. Ambassador. Her voice was weaker now. You shouldn't be here. I needed to understand, he said simply, before whatever happens next. A bitter laugh. Understanding is overrated, Ambassador. But since you're here, look at your scanner. Sector 7, Quadrant 12. Turleth directed the ship's sensors to those coordinates. What they revealed stunned him into silence. Within the human vessels, life signs, billions of them. Compressed, stored somehow, but unmistakably alive. Those are people. Every human ship carries a portion of our population. Reyes confirmed. We've learned to exist differently. Efficiency of space, conservation of resources, integration with our vessels. Your entire species is here, fighting this war. Earth is empty now, Ambassador. Has been for almost 2 centuries. We became our ships, our weapons, our purpose. The revelation struck Turleth like a physical blow. Humanity hadn't built a fleet. They had transformed their entire civilization into one. Every ship destroyed wasn't just a military asset lost. It was a floating city, a habitat, a piece of their world. Why? He whispered. Why would you do this? Because of what we saw coming. Not just the Voidborn. Worse things, lurking between galaxies. We knew conventional defenses wouldn't be enough. So we adapted. On the main view screen, the human fleet began to contract, drawing closer to the Voidborn node. At the center of their formation, a small object, impossibly small for something of such consequence, was being positioned. The evacuations are 87% complete, Turleth reported. We need more time. There is no more time, Ambassador. The node is powering up. If it activates fully, nothing stops them. Reyes paused, then continued more softly. There's something you should know. 300 years ago, during the Hegemony War, we didn't deploy our worst weapons. What you saw then, what made you fear us, that was us holding back. We could have done more. Should have, perhaps. Then why didn't you? Because we still hope to belong in this galaxy, to be accepted despite our nature. Another pause. We were naive. The human fleet contracted further. On sensors, energy readings from the void catalyst began to spike. Captain, Turleth said urgently, your ships are too close. You won't be able to escape the radius. We know. There was no fear in her voice, only certainty. The catalyst requires precise gravitational alignment. We're the anchors. The truth dawned on him with terrible clarity. You're sacrificing your entire fleet. Your people? Not all. 63 vessels have already withdrawn to safe distance, enough to preserve our kind, enough to rebuild. Her voice softened, enough to keep watching. Before Turleth could respond, alarms blared across his ship. The sensor officer's voice was tight with panic. The Voidborn node is charging its main weapon. They're targeting the evacuation fleet. On screen, the human formation changed instantly. Ships that had been maintaining the sphere broke away, placing themselves directly in the path of the gathering energy beam from the node. Dozens, then hundreds of vessels, each carrying thousands of human lives, forming a living shield for the retreating Concord ships. The Voidborn weapon fired, a lance of purplish energy that cut through space itself. It struck the human blockade with devastating force. Ships shattered, exploded, disintegrated, but they absorbed the blast. Not a single evacuation vessel was hit. In that moment of sacrifice, the void catalyst activated. There was no explosion as conventional physics would understand it. Instead, a sphere of absolute darkness expanded from the point of detonation, growing to encompass the Voidborn node and the remaining human ships. Where it passed, stars temporarily vanished, their light unable to escape or penetrate the phenomenon. Then, just as suddenly, It collapsed back into itself. When normal space reasserted, nothing remained. No voidborn, no human ships, not even debris. Just empty void, as if that section of space had been erased and rewritten. In the stunned silence that followed, Turleth became aware of a transmission. Weak, distant, but clear enough. Captain Ray's voice, recorded before the end. Ambassador, this message is programmed to send after the catalyst deployment. The surviving human vessels will withdraw to coordinates unknown to you. We will rebuild. We will continue our watch. If the Concorde requires our assistance again, the protocol remains unchanged. If not, let us be the nightmare you tell your children about. The monsters who saved you, then disappeared into the dark. A pause, and then softer. We never wanted to be feared. We only wanted to survive. In the end, perhaps they're the same thing. The message ended. True to her word, the remaining human ships, a fraction of their original number, were already vanishing, using whatever impossible drive technology had brought them in the first place. 3 days later, the Concord Council convened an emergency session. The voidborn threat had been eliminated entirely. 17 worlds had been successfully evacuated with minimal casualties. By any measure, it was a victory of unprecedented scale. Yet no one celebrated. Chancellor Elix addressed the assembly solemnly. Today we revise our understanding of humanity. They are not the monsters we believe them to be. They are something far more complex, and perhaps far more tragic. Ambassador Turleth took the floor next, his scales dulled with exhaustion and grief. The quarantine of Earth's system will be maintained, but not because we fear their aggression. We maintain it because they wish it so, because what humanity has become is both their burden and their choice. He activated a holographic display, showing the last recorded images of the human fleet before the catalyst deployment. They sacrificed thousands of their vessels, millions of their people, to save beings who had rejected them centuries ago. They did not request payment. They did not demand gratitude. They simply acted according to their nature. Admiral Vexera, her feathers still drooping in the Artaxian expression of mourning, asked the question that hung in the chamber. Will they return, Ambassador? Should we prepare? Turleth considered this for a long moment before answering. I believe they never truly left. Captain Rice said they've been watching us for centuries, protecting us from threats we never knew existed. He looked around the Grand Chamber, meeting the eyes of species who had once voted to isolate humanity from the galactic community. We feared them for what they could do. Perhaps we should have valued them for what they chose not to do. As the council session continued into debates about reconstruction and new defense protocols, Turleth found his gaze drawn to the viewport, to the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, humanity continued its solitary existence, transformed, isolated, watching. Not monsters, not saviors, something else entirely. A species that had looked into the abyss of space and decided to become what was necessary to face it. The nightmare that protected the dream.